Seriously, this is probably the only variable ND filter system that you need for run and gun video with the Panasonic GH5. First of all, I just want to say thank you to Freewell for sponsoring this video and sending me this variable ND filter system, this magnetic variable ND filter system that actually is really fantastic. And even though they did send it to me, I'm not required to say anything good or bad about this filter system. If you're new here, my name is Caleb and I do freelance video with the Panasonic GH5. If you want to learn more about the GH5, make sure you hit that subscribe button. So when Freewell reached out to see if I would be willing to make a video about this variable ND filter system, it actually really intrigued me because for run and gun shooters like a lot of us that use the GH5, I thought that it might be actually pretty beneficial for our style of shooting. First of all, you have the variable ND stops from 2 to 9, but my favorite feature, and we'll get this right out of the way right here at the beginning of the video, is the mist. You actually have a diffusion filter base right here on this system. So you don't have to stack filters, it's all right here.
Quick look from the backseat, city going by as we're passing streets. Dim lights in her basement dive, leather jacket in my whiskey knee, and I can't find a way to compromise unless I'm looking in your eyes. And I know we're leaving all the rules behind. Welcome to the wild.
So here's everything you get when you purchase the magnetic variable ND filter system from Freewell. Other than the reading material that's actually pretty helpful, you get this awesome leather or fake leather case with a carabiner if you want to attach it to your belt loop or your camera bag. But this case holds all of the filters. So you have the base that screws on to your actual lens with the cap, the magnetic cap, which is actually probably the best magnetic cap that I've ever seen. And then on here on the screw-on base, you have the different ND bases. This one is the Mist ND. Then the other one you're gonna have is the regular variable ND base that does not have the mist. Next, you have the 6 to 9 stop variable ND magnetic plate. And then when you flip it over, you actually have the CPL 32 ND. Then the last filter in there is the 2 to 5 stop variable ND with the CPL polarizer on the flip side. So normally when I go to shoot with my GH5, whatever lens I'm using, unless it's a vintage lens, I pretty much always toss on a diffusion filter, and I usually use the Black Pro Mist at an 1/8. And what I like about the diffusion filter is that it kind of takes off that, digital edge that sometimes the GH5 gives, especially when you're shooting with Sigma lenses. So right now, even on this shot, this Sigma 16mm, I have the Black Pro Mist on at an 1/8. And what I like about that strength is that it kind of takes off that digital edge. It kind of gives a nice little highlight roll off, and it kind of just, softens some of those harsh glares that you might get into the camera. So then anything up from the 1/8 is kind of more of like a stylistic choice. So if you use the Black Pro Mist at a 1/4 or the Moment Cinebloom at 20%, that kind of is more of like a stylistic choice for your video. And then another step that I have on top of that Black Pro Mist or diffusion filter is a variable ND filter. So like this shot right here, I also have the variable ND on so that I can keep my aperture at 1.4 on the Sigma 16mm, but I can also keep my ISO at 400, which is the native ISO for the Panasonic GH5. And then I adjust the variable ND to get the exposure that I need for like this shot or really any other shot. And this is why filters are important, especially like the variable ND, because you don't want to go outside and have to crank that aperture to the point where you're at like the minimum aperture of like f16 or f22, whatever your lens does, because that's just going to create some super harsh shadows in your shot. And that was probably one of the biggest mistakes that I made when I first started, doing this video thing, is that I wasn't shooting with variable NDs. And so I'd go out there on like a bright sunny day and I would just crank that aperture to the point where it was super dark shadows and really bright bright highlight parts of that image. So when I go out there to shoot, I really try not to take my aperture any slower than like f.5, f.6, somewhere in that range. And that's what I really like about this Freewell system, is that right here you have that 2 to 9 stop variable ND. And a lot of times we talk about that cinematic look, and that phrase is tossed around all the time on YouTube, but really there is something about not shooting at f22. It really makes a big difference in the look of the video if you're able to keep your aperture at some of those faster speeds and expose with your variable ND. So here's my settings for that shot. 1.3, ISO 400. I'm recording at 4K 60. And I have the filter right in between 8 and 9. There's a fire inside and I just can't hide it. There's a fire inside and I just can't fight it. Ooh. You know I'm coming for you. Then to use the filter system is really easy. Just take the base and thread that on to the front of your lens. Then you just take the variable ND base or the variable ND mist base, which this is probably the one that I would never take off. Then you just match this top notch with one of the grooves. And then you have your variable ND mist base in. So then you can just take the 2 to 5 stop variable ND or the 6 to 9 stop variable ND, and it is just a magnet attachment right on the top. Then one of the things you want to make sure when you go to attach your variable ND is that on each one of these, on the base and then on the filter itself, it has an A that you need to match up. So just match A to A, and then you know that it's properly aligned for when you go through those different steps. Then if you need to switch over to the polarizer, let's say you're shooting through a window or a windshield, you just flip that over and then you're using the polarizer. So it's a really easy process, a really easy setup, and then you have this awesome lens cap that can go right on top. It's magnetized and it's not gonna go anywhere. All right, here's a few things that I really like about this Freewell variable ND magnetic system. And first of all, it is magnetic. So yes, you have your base that you can just screw right onto the front of your lens, but then everything else, including the cap, is magnetic. So it's a really quick adjustment from that 2 to 5, 6 to 9 stop variable NDs. And like I said, for run and gun shooters, that's really important. And I know I already said this, but my favorite part of this is that it includes the diffusion filter, the mist filter. And to have it all in one magnetic system is huge for GH5 shooters, for run and gun shooters. That way you're not having to go and stack a bunch of different filters on top of each other. It's all right here in one system. There's not a whole lot that I dislike about this filter system, but one of the things that I don't know if it can be improved on, but one of the things that's kind of been driving me crazy about this is how you have to put it on and match those A points on the base and then on whatever variable ND that you're using. So one of the things I noticed in the past couple weeks when I've used is that it's hard to make that switch out real quick because you have to kind of, because you need to make sure that it's placed right so that it works right. And I don't know if it's something that can be improved on. It's just kind of how it is. So that's what I've got for this Freewell, what they claim is the world's first versatile magnetic variable ND. And it really is pretty versatile, and I think it's a great tool for GH5 shooters like you and me who want to get the most out of their run and gun setups. So thank you, Freewell, for sending me this versatile magnetic variable ND. If you have time, it'd be awesome if you stuck around, maybe watch one of these videos that's popping up on your screen right here. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.